webinars with Amy Stone from the Ohio State University Extension and Jody Ellis of Purdue University. Today, we're going to be learning more about another invasive wood pest, the Hemlock woolly adelgid. Our presenter today is Brad Onken, who is a forest entomologist with the USDA Forest Service, working for the Northeastern Area Forest Health Protection Office in Morgantown, West Virginia. Dr. Onken is a 30-year veteran with the Forest Service and has been working on the Hemlock woolly adelgid issue since 1991. He also serves as chair to the Hemlock woolly adelgid Coordinating Committee, which helps identify the research and technology development needs and facilitates the transfer of the newly developed technologies to affected state and federal and land managers throughout the East. Continuing education credits will be available for this session, and we will give you specifics as to acquiring those credits at the end of the presentation. I should suggest that you should be logged in with your name that you're going to be using when you're seeking these credits. As our other webinars, we would like you to feel free to type your questions and comments into the chat feature on the webinar screen. Brad will be answering any questions after he makes the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available for viewing later today. Go to www.emeraldashborer.info, which is all one word, to find the URL for the recorded webinar. And I want to thank you for your interest today, and please feel free to email me with your thoughts about today's presentation. We always like to hear these sessions. If these sessions are helpful to you and any other input you'd like to offer. And with that, Dr. Onken, welcome, and feel free to start your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Robin. I'm trying to get loaded up here. And I might need your assistance again. Can you hear me, Robin?
All you have to do is go to the share pod on the bottom and hit your computer screen. You want to bring up your Hemlock woolly adelgid PowerPoint on your computer screen first.
Okay.
And then you'll just share your computer screen on the webinar.
Oops. Very good. Thanks, Robin. I'm not exactly techno-savvy here, so this is all new technology for me, and I appreciate your assistance and invitation to give a presentation here. Now, not knowing exactly the kind of audience to expect here, I've planned a presentation that's rather general, broad but general, hoping that it'll catch some of the items that people want to hear about, and if there's anything that I've omitted or you'd like more information on, please don't hesitate to call me. My contact information will be on the final slide. Okay, during this presentation, I'm going to cover just a little bit of history of the HWA in the East, why it's such a problem in terms of both ecological and what the management issues are. I'm going to cover HWA biology, show you some photos so everybody is aware of what it looks like in different times of the year. And we'll talk about some of the impacts that's occurring out east, and then what the current distribution of HWA is. And then I'm going to jump over to talk about the Hemlock woolly adelgid initiative, and in particular the progress we've made in the areas of chemical and biological control. And then I'll wrap up with some homeowner control options. Okay, just as a brief history here, HWA was first observed in the east near Richmond, Virginia in 1951. And in the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, I mean, it was found Moving about, in fact, in Pennsylvania, I think it was first recorded in 68 or 69 in southeastern Pennsylvania near Philadelphia. But it was always in the urban environment, and that environment, it was always easily controlled with a variety of insecticides, so it was never given much thought as a serious forest pest. In the 1980s, mid-1980s in particular, HWA made its way up into Connecticut and northern New Jersey into the hemlock forests. And from that point on, it's been downhill and spreading like wildfire down the south in the Appalachians and further west. And mainly because now out of the urban environment, it's got a large number of host trees available to it, so populations are able to just blow up and expand their range. So between 2002 and the present, 2002 is significant, at least in this presentation, because it has to do with the beginning of the HWA initiative, and I'll get into that a little bit more later here. So there are a total of 9 hemlock species worldwide. There's 3 in China, 2 in Japan, 2 in Western North America, and 2 in the Eastern North America here. We have, on the east, we have Eastern hemlock, obviously, and a smaller range of species it's called Carolina hemlock. And you can find that in a very narrow range in North Carolina, a little bit of Tennessee and Virginia and Georgia and South Carolina. Eastern hemlock has always been considered an ecologically significant species. It's a very long-lived species. Typically, it's common to find trees that are in the 300 plus year range, but it is known to grow as old as 600 years. It's highly shade tolerant. It can actually survive in the understory of stands for hundreds of years before making it up into the canopy. And then it has a very dense branching pattern, and as it grows, these branches totally enclose the understory, making a very favorable environment for additional hemlocks that are shade tolerant, because there are no other species of hemlock or species of trees that are as shade tolerant. And then again, Carolina hemlock has a very narrow geographical range. Now, some of the values of eastern hemlock, as far as aesthetic and recreational values go, if you come out to the east, you'll notice that a large number of state, federal, and even private parks have been established specifically because of the hemlock resource. If you ever had an opportunity to walk into a mature hemlock stand, you'll recognize them as offering almost a cathedral-like ambiance. In fact, there's a state park in West Virginia that's called Cathedral State Park for that very reason. They're highly prized for recreational opportunities. The dense canopies offer a cool place to go hiking in the summertime, and many people refer to them as the redwoods of the East. Ecological values, wildlife. There are several neotropical migrant birds, including the black-throated green and black-Burnian warblers, and the blue-headed vireo, in addition to the Acadian flycatcher, that are obligate species of eastern hemlock. The benefits of eastern hemlock go beyond just the terrestrial vertebrates too. They their shading, dense shade offers protection to headwater streams and mountain streams. And what we found is that streams that originate from hemlock stands tend to be 1 to 2.5 degrees centigrade cooler than those same kinds of streams that originate in hardwood forests. So they help maintain cool stream water temperatures. In addition to that, they are also provide a stabilization to soils, which is important in the east here where hemlock occurs in steep ravines oftentimes. So the biology, HWA has 2 generations a year on hemlock. It actually goes through 6 life stages, egg and then 4 nymphal instars and then the adult. Adelgids, actually all adelgids are parthenogenic, meaning that it's asexual reproduction, so each insect is a female. And when you have the capacity of each female laying 300 eggs, it doesn't take long before you have an outbreak condition. In fact, it's actually exponential growth, population growth, when all the conditions are right. If you do the math in 2 generations a year at 300 eggs, you're looking at one insect being able to produce more than 90,000 offspring in just 1 year. The other unique thing about the hemlock woolly adelgid is that it's active throughout the winter months, the cooler winter months, rather than as most insects are active during the summer months and go dormant during the winter. The HWA is spread by primarily by wind and birds, although it does transport around on other small mammals, deer, and it gets moved around long distances, particularly by humans moving infested nursery stock. So this graphic was actually prepared by Dr. Mike Montgomery, has since retired. Dr. Mike Montgomery worked at for the Northern Research Station up in Hamden, Connecticut, but it depicts the life cycle of HWA quite nicely, I think. It shows the 2 generations there. Right now, if you look on the calendar, I'm not sure if you can see my arrow here pointing, but we're right in this neck of the woods, mid-March timeframe. So we're right in between the Siston generation, which is the population that overwinters, and then the Progredian generation. And you'll notice that the Progredian generation only lasts like about 3 months out of the year. And as the Siston population is about 9 months. And there's, on the picture, if you look at the pictures on the bottom of the screen, you can see on the far left, this is an adult adelgid with his complement of eggs here. And the next picture over is the crawler stage. Now that's the first instar nymph. And that's the only mobile stage of HWA. After that, I mean, the HWA settles down. If you go on down the line in the pictures here, will settle down and insert its stylet bundle, its mouth parts, right at the base of the hemlock needle. And at that point, it'll, depending on which generation it is, if it's a Siston generation, at that point it's going to go into a summer dormancy period, and or summer estivation we call it, and that occurs normally in the between July and September, and then it awakens again in October and starts refeeding and growing again. So as it matures, you can see the white halo around the body of the insect as a nymph there. And as it matures, it starts producing the white flocculence or white wool around itself. And as it grows, it continues to expand this white flocculence and then uses that to lay its eggs. Now, I will mention that there is a second life form of the Adelgid. It's called the sexupare, and that stage of it occurs simultaneously with during the Progredian phase, and that population will produce wings and then fly off to find its primary host, which is actually true for all adelgids. The primary host is the spruce tree. And fortunately, that population in the United States or North America dies off. I mean, it does not have a suitable, we do not have a suitable spruce tree in the Northeast for it to complete its sexual reproduction. Okay, just as another pictorial and giving an idea of what life stages are around when and when to be on the lookout for. You can see between November and July is about the period of time you want to be out looking for HWA, because that's when the white woolly masses are most visible. In that period of July to October, you have these little naked nymphs that you almost need a hand lens to really see, unless you have very good eyesight. And okay, I guess enough said. So what is the Adelgid feeding on? I mean, what's happening here? The Adelgid inserts its stylet bundle into at the base of the needle in and around the leaf cushion area. And unlike other sap-flowing insects, sap-feeding insects, HWA feeds on stored nutrients in the xylem ray parenchyma cells. Now, this is really critical storage area for the trees, because those are the reserves it's going to call on for the next year's growth. So in the absence of that, the tree is unable to put out new growth the following year. So what's actually happening to the tree, again, you're seeing a depletion of nutrient reserves. The needles begin to desiccate and start to fall. You'll see a stunting or inhibited new growth on the individual branches that are infested. You'll see bud mortality occur, and then leading into dieback of the twigs and limbs, and then pretty soon you've got such a weakened tree in such a state of weakened condition that it becomes susceptible to other agents like the hemlock borer or droughty conditions. So as of 2010, this is the current range of hemlock woolly adelgid. I think we added 20 I forget what it was, 23 counties, I believe it was, in 2010, highlighted in yellow. So it's not slowing down any. So how quickly do hemlock trees die once they become infested? Well, it really depends on a lot of things that are neither predictable or necessarily known, but what we've recognized is that winter temperatures, cold winter temperatures really have an influence on the rate of how fast the hemlock woolly adelgid populations build. So when you get temperatures that are in the minus 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, it really slows it down quickly. And in fact, you can have an infestation go from heavy to being reduced by 99%. It rarely, although having said that, it rarely knocks out 100% of the Adelgids. And again, because of the exponential population growth, it doesn't take long for it to recolonize. So if you're thinking you're safe in the northern climates, well, you are for a while. At least you have some advantages there. It's going to come and go, but it really just takes a couple of back-to-back mild winters to really see things take off. So in addition to winter temperatures, the occurrence of other abiotic and biotic stressors like drought or other hemlock pests such as the elongate hemlock scale, all are going to influence how fast the trees succumb. The density of the infestation, obviously, and then the tree health conditions at the onset of the infestations. So let's take a look at a couple of case studies here. I've got three, I pulled out three. One up in Delaware Water Gap, which is up in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's a national recreation area. The Shannon Dolan National Park in Virginia, and then the Great Smoky Mountain National Park in North Carolina, Tennessee. So the Delaware Water Gap, we first observed HWA back in 1989, and it took about 11 years before we first saw our first sign of hemlock decline and tree mortality. And now it's been almost 20 years, and we're seeing just over 30% of tree mortality. But the fact is, a lot of the residual trees are in a pretty sorry state. I mean, in moderate or severe decline. So we don't know how long it's going to go. Could be, I mean, they have an active program trying to preserve their hemlock resource up there now, but a lot of the damage has been done, and only time is going to tell whether or not these hemlocks are going to be able to pull through. The Shenandoah National Park, which would be, again, kind of in the mid range of the latitude here. Again, it was first discovered, HWA discovered in '89, but in that same time frame, 10, 11 years, we saw almost 50% of tree mortality and nearly 100% of the remaining trees in a severe decline. And then by 2003, we saw greater than 95% hemlock mortality. The Great Smoky Mountains, first detected in 2002. It was widespread by 2004. And in 4 short years, we saw extensive mortality down there, entire watersheds. Now that did coincide with the severe drought the South endured here during that time frame. So some of the management challenges: all age classes of hemlock are vulnerable. HWA is rapidly spreading to new areas. Tree mortality often within 10 years. Available insecticide treatments are limited to individual tree applications. HWA populations can build quickly and are difficult to detect at low densities. That's why it's so important to get out there and be looking for this thing constantly. Natural enemies native to the eastern North America have not proven effective at controlling HWA. Now, there are no federal regulatory restrictions offering a quarantining of HWA, but there are 6 states, including Michigan, that have their own state quarantines. And Michigan, by the way, has their own does have HWA up there, or has had. We've had, I think this past couple of years, like 5 different isolated infestations that came in off of infested nursery stock. So in 2002, the National Plant Board and the National Association of State Foresters put forward resolutions, actually petitioning the U.S. Forest Service to take the lead on developing a management plan for HWA, to come forward and to help sort out, what can be done to manage HWA. So the program components of the plan that the Forest Service came up with was three: research and development, management, and information transfer. Now there were 10 key areas that were considered priority areas for research and tech development. I'm going to talk today about biological and chemical control, but I mean, these other areas, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of information out there, and if you're interested, please let me know, and I can point you in the right direction to read all about it. So under the umbrella of the HWA initiative, we've had tremendous amount of external partnerships evolve, including 24 universities. We have 20 state agencies involved in different aspects of implementing the management strategies we come up with. Overseas, for foreign exploration, we have looked at China and Japan. A number of federal agencies and even private industry has been a big part of this. So again, I'm going to talk about chemical and biological control here. Now, the overall management strategies for chemical control is really short term. I mean, we're thinking in terms of we need to protect as many hemlocks as we can in the short term, so we have a chance for biological control agents to take hold and start controlling the Adelgid on their own. So chemical treatment strategies in the East, there are many state and federal agencies that are treating high-value hemlock trees on public lands. And treatments are primarily in parks and recreational areas for the purpose of public safety or hazard tree mitigation, for the purpose of seed and genetic tree preservation, or protecting areas of that are ecologically significant. And again, treatments are really considered a stopgap measure until biological control agents prove effective. Now, what most of the state and federal programs are using are one or two chemicals, or both. In some cases, imidacloprid and dinotefuran. And I think if you're familiar with emerald ash borer, you've seen these before, and they're very effective neonicotinoids, and both have distinct advantages and disadvantages. Imidacloprid, can be applied either as a soil injection or soil drench, a stem injection. There's formulations out there. And then more recently, these Cortec tablets that allow users to be able to pack in to some pretty remote areas that don't have access to water for the other formulations. So these are a convenient tool. And dinotefuran, the three primary methods being used are soil injection, soil drench, and basal bark spray. Now, the pros and cons of both products: imidacloprid tends to provide much longer residual benefits, in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 years, if you've treated a tree with imidacloprid. It may take a year or more before the control is evident because it's much slower moving throughout the vascular system of hemlock trees. But it's lower cost, There is a restriction on the amount of active ingredient per acre that you're allowed, and it's limited to individual tree treatments only. And it does have a forest label, which prior to 2003 it did not. Now, dinotefuran, or Safari, offers, as far as we can tell, it looks like at least 1 to 2 years control. It's very fast acting, so it offers an opportunity for those heavily infested trees that you need to knock the population down quickly. It's a much better product to deploy than imidacloprid would be. However, it's more expensive. There is, again, restrictions on the amount of active ingredient per acre, so you have to pick and choose your trees wisely and stay within that restricted amount. And then it too is only used as an individual tree treatment. And there's currently no forest label for dinotefuran. Tree injection, most of the folks that are using this methodology are using it on trees that are very near streams, and which is very common in the case for treating hemlocks, considering that hemlocks like to grow around streams. And so this allows you to get right up to the water's edge here, rather than risking using a soil treatment that could get into the water system otherwise. The disadvantages on this is that its treatment timing is a lot more critical. I mean, you have to be applying this product at a time when the trees are actively transpiring, so it's moving up, being taken up by the tree. And typically trees need to be in reasonably good health before they're going to take it up. It's definitely more complicated to apply, so it's not for the homeowner to use. It's more for somebody that's been trained in this methodology. It's more labor intensive, and again, it's more costly. So what's on the horizon? We're taking a look at an Adelgid killing fungi with Lacanisilum muscarum. And this is an idea that came forward from Dr. Scott Costa, University of Vermont. And Scott has been working with the Forest Service on evaluating this product as a potentially use for landscape level treatments. And it's currently not registered in the U.S. for application, but there is a company in Europe that produces this product commercially, and we're working with that company, or I should say Scott Costa is working with the company to go through the registration process in the U.S., and hopefully we'll see this in the future as a more effective way of treating hemlocks on the landscape level. Okay, classical biological control, the approach for this on this program here is to locate, identify, screen, and evaluate HWA natural enemies in their native habitat, which means foreign exploration. You got to go back to where the hemlocks and the other countries are where HWA is found to be native. And whoops, I heard something there. And okay, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so we have foreign exploration going on, and we're taking these predators that we're finding, and we're just looking at very host-specific natural enemies of HWA. I mean, so in order to be considered in the program, it has to be an Adelgid-specific predator. Otherwise, we're not even giving it a second look. And so far, we've found several out there in China and Japan and Western North America. But I tell you, I mean, when you're starting from scratch in a biocontrol program, a classical biological control program, you cannot be impatient. Everything takes time. I mean, for the foreign exploration, I just went through a list here, just what kind of, and they're just steps along the way that you got to go through. So you're essentially looking at from the beginning to end, and I mean end by the time you've actually able to release the predator, it takes 7 to 10 years. And which is, when you start adding that up for these predators, it takes a long time to get things established out there. But we have to make science-based decisions, and I mean, it's just a critical part of the process. And we're fortunate to have so many universities involved in the program. In particular, Virginia Tech and University of Massachusetts have been key players in the north here, and obviously University of Tennessee, Clemson, and all the others. I shouldn't have started mentioning any of them because I don't want to leave anybody out. They're all just important scientists that the Forest Service has tapped into. So there are currently 3 predators that have been released over since about, well, I guess the Sasagi skimnus was first released up in Connecticut back in early, well, I should say late 90s, mid to late 90s. And that was led by Dr. Mark McClure up at the Connecticut Agricultural Station up there. And but I'm going to talk in more detail here on the Leucobus nigrinus, which is native to Western North America. Now, out west, this Leucobus nigrinus, and we call it Larry as a nickname for short here. So Larry is a major factor in controlling HWA populations out west. Yes, there are some host resistance in western hemlock where HWA occurs, and we find this beetle predator. But the fact is, if you go to arboretums out west, say in Seattle or Portland, and you can find eastern hemlock growing in these arboretums, you can go there and they'll be heavily infested one year. You can beat on them, collect all kinds of predators, particularly this Larry beetle, and the next year HWA is just wiped out and the trees do not show any decline. So we think it's a major player in regulating HWA. It was first released in 2003. Since that time, there's been more than 100,000 adult beetles released in the east. And it's currently established in most states that are infested now. In fact, beetle populations at some of the release sites are such that it's allowed people to go in and actually harvest beetles there to relocate them to new areas. So will these beetles be sufficient to protect our hemlocks? Well, not likely in the short term, but it's all a game of numbers. We have right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rearing labs that are actively rearing Larry beetles and providing them to various states. In the Northeast, Virginia Tech and New Jersey Department of Agriculture are primary labs supporting predator releases. Now, some of the lessons learned have been tough and long coming, but what we've learned is that we need to concentrate future releases of this beetle in areas where HWA is either newly established or trees are remain healthy and HWA populations haven't completely overwhelmed them already. We need to release larger numbers of predators, and which means it's going to have to be in fewer locations, because there's only X number of beetle predators available each year, and the initial strategy was to spread them out, try to get them established in as many places as possible, and then let them self-perpetuate. But we're trying to rush that along now, because as it's turning out, the trees don't have that much time when you're talking about a 10-year period. And then we need to integrate selective use of chemical treatments with the release of predators as a means of protecting tree health while the populations begin to build. Now there is a new Japanese Leucobia species that looks very promising. It was discovered. It was newly discovered in 2005 in Japan, and there's since been identified and named. It's Leucobius osakensis. It's gone through extensive testing both in Japan and then in quarantine in Virginia Tech, where we looked at the host range, and it is very similar in biology to Leucobius nigrinus, which is a big benefit because that's going to cut down on the learning curve here for us. It offers more cold tolerance. I mean, in Japan, Dr. Ashley Lamb, that spent 2 years over there studying this insect, would find it as high as 7,000 plus feet in elevation. It has a higher reproductive potential than nigrinus does. It consumes more HWA and can reproduce on Adelgid nymphs, unlike Leucobius nigrinus, which needs the HWA eggs to reproduce. And I think a key point here is that this beetle actually evolved with the exact HWA that we have here in the East, thanks to some of the molecular DNA technology that's evolved here in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Research has determined that the HWA that we have in the East here originated from Japan. So we think we're onto something of finding a beetle to go after the same Adelgid that it has evolved with. And we're hoping for our first release this fall, sometime early winter of 2012. So we got great expectations for this thing, and we nicknamed it the Larry Samurai. Okay, so I've covered quite a bit here, and I just want to introduce you to several publications that are available online at the website you see below. If you want to learn more about biological control, you can find our our publication on that. We're actually producing an updated one on that that'll be available probably in the next several months. You'll find some guidelines for minimizing the impact of HWA, and then a manual on how to survey. Okay, on this website too, I want to point out that we have a bibliography database, and it's a searchable bibliography database. So on it you can search by either author, title, or keywords, and I mean, it literally has thousands of publications that are connected with Hemlock or Hemlock woolly Adelgid or other Adelgids. if you want to learn more about anything. It's a great resource, particularly if you're doing research or collecting some background information on different aspects of this problem. So for control options for the homeowner, you always have foliar sprays in horticultural oils or insecticide soaps work well, but they're typically limited to short trees or hedges because you need to literally saturate the entire crown of the tree if you're going to use it effectively. You have systemic soil treatments. Again, you have the Bayer Advanced Garden and Tree Shrub Insect Control. That's the imidacloprid. Then you can buy this product down at your garden shop or Lowe's. Okay, there's the Bayer Advance, and I got my slides here grouped up. And the other product you have is the dinotefuran product, the tree and shrub, the green light tree and shrub insect control with Safari. Whatever you do, just make sure you please follow label instructions. Keep all of this product out of water because it does it is detrimental to aquatic invertebrates and well, not vertebrates, but invertebrates. Okay, some preventative control options include cultural methods such as things like keeping bird feeders away from hemlocks. Again, birds are known to transport that crawler stage of the Adelgid, and birds are known to love hemlocks. Put 2 and 2 together and you end up with infested trees. Another thing to keep in mind in cultural control, be extra cautious not to transport HWA crawlers during the March-June time period when these little buggers are blowing in the wind and they can land on your clothes or other articles or on your pets, and when you go into new areas you end up transferring or introducing this pest. And lastly, in terms of maintenance or preventative, well, it's not preventative, it would be just keeping your trees healthy. Mulch your trees if they're growing in your yards, water during droughty periods. Hemlocks have extremely shallow root systems, so they can't tolerate much drought. But what you don't want to do is fertilize infested hemlock trees because all you're going to do is aggravate the population of adelgids. I mean, you can enhance it, I should say, because the adelgids take advantage of the additional nitrogen in the tree. Okay, Robin, I guess that's it. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Brad. We have just a few questions for you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very enlightening. We have one person who asked, when inspecting hemlock, would you expect the hemlock woolly adelgid near the trunk or the tip of the branch?
Yeah, that's a good question. You'd expect to see it on the outer tips of the branch, on the newest, most growth is where to look.
All right. That you may have answered that. This was answered a little bit, but you might want to extrapolate a little. What keeps the adelgid under control in Asia? Is it just the biocontrol, or do they use other methods?
Yeah, in Asia and Western North America, HWA is not a pest problem at all, and that's why we've really started from scratch because nobody's bothered to study the thing in any depth, up until it became a problem in the East here. But what we see as the primary control agents are one, trees. Some of these trees that have evolved with the Adelgid have developed host resistance, and then some of these natural enemies that occur in these areas that have also evolved with the Adelgid help keep it in check.
Okay, we have another comment and question. What are the possible negative effects of biological control on other biological entities in North America, such as honeybees?
Biological effects on honeybees. Well, there should not be any negative effects of any of the predators that we're introducing on honeybees because they're all Adelgid specialists. I mean, meaning that they won't feed on anything but Adelgids. And we're selecting ones that have a preference for hemlock woolly Adelgids, so they're even more specific. Did that capture?
And I think too, what folks may not realize is there is an entire process that's involved, a very lengthy and detailed process that the USDA goes through before it approves any biological control agents released in the United States.
Most definitely. I mean, it takes well, I think I touched on it, the length of time it takes from the time that you selected a potential candidate to the time that you can actually make a wild release in the environment. You're looking at probably 5 years, 5 to 7 years actually, for this new Japanese Laricobius beetle. That has taken us 7 years before we'll actually be able to make that first release. And it's just because of the host range testing and other environmental aspects of looking into what the potential risks are.
Okay. How about oil spray in spring? Can that help initiate control to help the systemics out?
Oil spray in spring. So I guess the question is, if you make a foliar application of oil, will that help? Yeah, I guess yes. I'll say if you're doing an imidacloprid treatment, where again it takes a year or more sometimes to for the product to get up in the tree to control the Adelgid. You're certainly going to get quicker knockdown with a direct application of either horticultural oil or insecticidal soap or some other petrochemical that you're using for as an insecticide if you spray it on directly.
I have one question here. How about fall fertilization with the slow-release nitrogen? Is that helpful?
If we're talking about infested trees, I would no, it's not. Now, if you're chemically suppressing the Adelgids at the time that you're doing the fertilization, okay. But otherwise, if you're dealing with an infested tree and you have not controlled that Adelgid population, I would not apply nitrogen fertilizers.
Okay, let's see. I have one more comment here. Let me read this through. It says it would seem to make sense that the first step in finding any kind of control for any insect would be to identify exactly what attracts a particular insect to a particular species of tree, which is what this is the research they're doing. In other words, what is the specific thing that attracts hemlock woolly Adelgid to hemlock? Or, as another example, what exactly attracts emerald ash borer to Fraxinus species? Well, I can answer the Fraxinus species one. emerald ash borer is attracted to volatiles in the Fraxinus species. And right now, they don't know. There are so many volatiles that come out of those trees right now. To track down the exact specific volatile has become pretty difficult. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, but they are working on that. So I don't know if you can maybe relate that to how hemlock woolly adelgid is attracted to hemlocks.
Yeah, sure. I would say for hemlock woolly adelgid, it doesn't, since it can't fly, it has no ability to search out hemlocks. So when it lands on hemlock, it's because it's hitchhiked or just caught a ride on the breeze of the wind and got lucky and landed on a hemlock tree. So in the urban environment, as I mentioned early on, in the early years, it rarely happened, so it was never that big of a deal. But once it made it into the hemlock forest, then now you've got just a tremendous load of adelgid crawlers out there that are able to find their way to hemlock trees. But it's not because they have the ability to seek out the hemlocks. It's just happen chance.
All right. I don't see any more questions. I'm sorry, we've had some, oh, wait a minute, here we've got one. Will the new Japanese beetle become the focus of our rearing labs rather than the North American beetle?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that is the long-range plan here, mainly because we have the ability to go out to Western North America and collect additional beetles if we want to bring them back out east and release additional Nigrinus beetles. But as with Japan, I mean, we have to rely on our ability to mass rear these things in the lab. So that'll be our primary source for release.
All right. Thank you very much, Brad. I just wanted to remind everyone, I've posted some information on the chat. I'm having trouble getting my slide to come up, but it should give you information on how you can get SAF credits. I am not sure. Someone's asking about ISA credits, and that Amy Stone would probably know about that. So if you want to, if you'd like to, her email address is located in that chat posting that I just put in about how to get credits for today's. So you might want to email her and ask her about that. So I appreciate that. Are there any more questions? Oh, I'm sorry. It says here, so if you only have one or two scattered hemlocks, it may not get hemlock woolly adelgid?
Unfortunately, it depends on proximity to where the adelgids are coming from. And, so if you've got one or two hemlocks that are a mile away from the nearest hemlock-infested forest, then it might take years, before, if it ever gets there. So it reduces the likelihood, but it doesn't eliminate your risk at all.
Okay. Let's see. All right. I think we have answered all the questions, and I think if you have other questions, make sure to get a hold of Dr. Onken. Email, I'm assuming, would be best. And thank you all for joining the presentation, and we will be talking with you all again soon. Thank you. And Brad, I'll give you a call.
Okay, thanks.